Okay, hi dear student. First of all, I need to apologize to you for having missed a couple of beats. I promise that I will make it up to you. And so today I would like to go over some measuring technique. They're always useful, right? Copying from life is always fascinating, but a little bit tricky, a little bit, it needs practice, right? So I'm gonna show you some of the basic measuring technique from, my book, Basic Human Anatomy, but still there's measuring to be done in human anatomy. So let's see where I have my example, right? I apologize, guys, but drawing techniques, it should be here. So this is measuring technique, measuring for shortening. So basically this is a quick drawing I did to show a little bit how this measuring function, right? One of the most used. So using your pencil, right, you will have use your pencil held like this. What you do, you line up let's say the tip of the pencil with the top of the head, or the measure that you need to measure, and the thumb with another landmark, in this case the chin, and then you see how many times this fits into the body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So I can see that the ratio head to body is, in this case, 1 to 7.5, right? So of course you're going to do this at the distance, and when you do this, you have to keep your arm stretched up completely straight, and then move up and down so that you don't vary the scale as you measure, right? Let's see how we can apply this measurement in here to our subject, which is today this lovely cactus that you already know, right? So we're going to copy from life. So I prepared this little sketch in advance because that way we can pretend that this is the subject, and I'm going to show you how to approach this, okay? So I'm going to go over it a little bit just to make it a little bit more visible, because I realize the drawing is a little bit faint, right? And so we're going to use this concept of proportional relationships. What does it mean? It means that I want to find the relationship in between the various proportions of my subject. So, yeah, you're saying, so what? What does that mean? It means that I'm going to take, as I showed you before, a measurement. It could be any measurement of this, of my subject, right? Whatever is more convenient, more easy to measure, and then I'm going to relate it to other measurement of the same subject. So in this case, I would like to see how many times, for example, this measurement here, which is easy to identify, right? This measurement here fits into the total height of my cactus, right? So let's see. 1, 2, and 2 1/4, between 2 1/4 and 2 1/3, right? So I know that now the ratio between the proportional relationship between this and this is 1 to 2 1/4, right? So let's see now the width of this. So this is the width, right, of the cactus, and now I want to see this measurement, how this measurement here relates to the height. So I take this, I put it here, and that's 1, and that's about almost half. Let's actually, we could say half, right? And then we make it a little bit bigger than that. So now, armed with this knowledge, right, I want to go start drawing on my piece of paper this subject. So first thing I do, now I know the ratio, so I could once I establish the size of once I know the ratio, I can establish arbitrarily the size of the part of the cactus that I use as parameter, any size that I want, provided I maintain the ratio, right? So now, actually, let's start with this. Let's start with the height, right? I squeeze my finger trying to fix something in the back here, and it's like, looks like I have, you know, paint in my fingers, but my nails. It's just a big rock responsible for that. Okay, so now I have now the height of the cactus here, that is going to be the height of the flower of the cactus, the red part of the cactus, that is what I'm gonna mark in here. So now I know that I take this, right? Actually, let's do this, it's easier. 1, 2, and we see the third, so this is the third. I'm gonna put it here, about here. So that this is the total height of my cactus, right? So now I want to see, let me see, I make it a little bit more evident, right? And then later I'm gonna lighten it up when I want to paint with watercolor. So that is now the top of the cactus, and this is the body of the cactus. Now I want to find the width, right? So the width, we've seen that is about 1.5 of that, right? So let's start from here, right? 1 and about 1.5. So now that is the width of the cactus. Now if I look at this, I could also find out how this width relates to the height of the flower, and it's similar, it's kind of the same. Lucky me, right? So I'm gonna do this now. Take this, establish more or less, so this is gonna be the volume occupied by the flower, and I eyeball an even space at the bottom of the base of the flower, and I kind of block in here now the volume of the cactus, right? So now this is called notional space, which is given by the maximum height, the maximum width, and possibly, but we don't have it really here, the maximum depth of our subject. So now I can further refine my cactus, always measuring using that measurement. I want to find smaller and smaller measuring, meaning I start with a big and then gradually break it down to smaller and smaller segment, or smaller and smaller forms. So I want to look at how much space this little efflorescence, this little stemming part of the cactus occupy. So let's see, if this is the from here to here, right? Imagine I'm still measuring the real cactus. Let's pretend this is the cactus, right? So I'm doing this in a distance, and it's kind of, so this, it's a little bit bigger. There's a little bit more than half. So let's see, if I find half first, right? And once I find half, I know it had to be a little bit bigger than that, right? So the part of this little smaller efflorescence is a little bit more than half. So now I want to get more detail in here, right? And I want to find, for example, where is this margin of the cactus overall. So I look at this distance, right, this space in here, see how many times that fits in there, right? 1, 2, 3, and a little bit. So let's see if I can find something easier to do, right? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is 3. So I'm going to work with this, right? I divide this in 3 equal segments, eyeballing it, right? You got just eyeball it a little bit, and then you measure, right? So you practice 1, 2, 3, I'm happy with that. And now I see that here, this is going to go down like this, more or less, but it's a little bit at an angle, right? So compared to the vertical, a little bit more at an angle. So a little bit more at an angle compared to the vertical. And then this is going to be a little bit curved. I mean, this point in here is going to be more lateral than this point in here. See that? So when I just find coordinate, one here, one here, this here is to the left of the vertical from there. So this is starting point. I don't make this down here. I make it this much there. Make sense, right? So now I can follow this curvature here and have a pretty good idea of the position. I mean, you know, if I have a starting point and an ending point, then it's so much easier to create the curvature, right? It's always an approximation. So later, if I find more and more information, I will change that, right? So this is just an approximation. So let's see now. So I have now this one here. Is that a third? Yeah, up here they are kind of similar. All right, except this is slightly bigger than that, right? So this is slightly bigger, right? And then now similarly, I bring down the vertical and I see that, all right, this point in here is close to the vertical, right? So that is the vertical. This is the point where this line starts here, right? And it goes a little bit to the right. So a little bit, as I keep telling my students, is a good concept, because you don't really want to have too much precise analysis of that, because we can't. So also we want to train our eye to evaluate this measurement in terms of a little bit more than, a little less than, and so on, right? It's going to be a sufficient approximation. So now I have now this, that is what remains, that is, oh, actually, let me see. Oh, okay, because I drew this line in here. Now, next to it, I can put this other line in here, and see, this has kind of angles, right? Luckily, it looks like these, the length of these three is similar. Actually, no, that's longer, right? So I have 1, 2, oh, look at that, and 3. So you have this segment in here that increase gradually in length. So I want to eyeball this segment in here, right? This a little bit longer and that the longest. So 1, 2, a little bit longer, and 3. So maybe this is even a little bit longer, right? So because this is kind of parallel to that in terms of direction, I simply can go down with a line like this and then break it down in these little angles like that. Make sense? So now I can block in this other line in here, which is a little bit more complex, a little bit more complicated, but still I can find all these points in here, measure them patiently, and what I could do first, I could find big division, right? From here to here, and I look at these, how they relate to each other. I can eyeball it, right? And down and down like that, right? And then I can check, right? See, 1, 2, a little bit, and 2/3. All right, let's see. 1, 2, 2/3. It looks good, right? What it is, a little bit higher maybe here. And now I can find, let's say, this point in here, which is not halfway. See that? Not halfway. It's a little bit higher than halfway. So I find here halfway point, move up a little bit. And now I have, I can now, using the same method, I'm not going to go over the whole thing because you understand what I'm doing now here. You can now find all these little changes in angle in the cactus, right? And so on. So now find this little angle here. I look at how much space I have between the base of the cactus here and the base of the cactus in here, down like this, right? This one out here, I come up with this, and it's pretty much the same space that I have in here, I move it up. So same space I have here, move it up, right? Makes sense. So you will kind of, let me see, and now that is just a little bit above this measurement here, right? Okay, so see how really you can, what you had to do, what this is conceptualization. So I reduce complex organic forms to essential, basic geometric volume, or as close as possible to geometric volumes. This is at the base of stereometry. Right? Stereometry is the science that measures volumes, and in this case it's applied to natural forms. So now I want to see how many of these rays I have in here, right? And now I'm going to remeasure them, because now what I'm doing is I'm looking at my real cactus, right? And I see that there's a ray that goes, a fall that goes down like this, in this direction, slightly at an angle, and is directed exactly along this line in here. So here, right, direct to this line in here. And then there is another one that is kind of halfway between here and here. Lucky me, right? Lucky me. So this would come up like this. This is halfway there. And then there is another one here, and then another one here, that create a gradual decrease of the space between this portion of the cactus, right? So this is a peak, right? This is a peak in here, and so this is the peak of the form. I want to find the peak of the form in here, and now similarly I can add the other segment in here, right? So this segment in here is halfway between these two, lucky me, right? But think, you could be halfway, a little bit more than halfway, a little bit less than halfway, and so on. Now, there is another one that is kind of just past this here, right? And then one right on the margin in here, and then one just barely visible there. So I am gradually building up the structure of the cactus, more and more complex structure of the cactus, see that? And now I want to block in these little florets. I don't know what to call them. I'm really not expert in cacti, in nomenclature of the cacti, so you gotta be patient with that. So now I see that at the base of the flower, there is a little, let's call it floret, like that is occupying most of this space in here, and start, let's say it's going to be partially cut by this line here if it goes up, and it gets all the way to close to the end of this one here. This is a pretty big one here, right? And I block my first fluorescence here, and then I have another one that is kind of in line with these here, and it's a little bit below this line here, a little bit below, and the floret on top is similar in size and reaches almost to this measurement that I established before, right here and here. Now is another one here, and then another one also at the end of that here, and then one very tiny here. And so now this segment of the cactus comes lower here, and then I have another one behind this segment of the floret in here, of the flower here, and it's out here like this, right? So you see how when I make a mark, I have to relate it to other marks. So in the beginning, this method is going to be, oh my God, and tedious, but you stick with it for a while, because what it does, it teaches you to see, it teaches you to relate a form with another form. And after a while, it becomes instinctive. You don't have to think about this anymore. Your eye automatically goes roaming around looking for other element that already there, and what this line is doing is asking the other element, where am I going, right? Where is my place, right? And the other elements are going to tell you, you go there, that's your place, you dorm on top, I sleep on top, you sleep below in the bunk room, right? That's how it is when you get into the military, right? And then that's where you have to go, because the other one were there first, right? And so you have to respect their being there first, right? So maybe another floor here, right? Like that, right here. So we see now how I am gradually defining more and more of this form. But now this cactus has also at the apex, at the peak of these segments, right, has little bumps. Now I want to see how many bumps I have. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on this one I have 4 bumps. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe there's another one up there. And if I line up these bumps, you relate this bump with the other one, I see that by lining them up, I see that they have, remember the coneflower? They have, it also incredibly has a spiraling organization of these little bumps. Beautiful, right? So we see how the knowledge that you acquire from a species completely different in terms of structure can be applied to reading other forms, right, in nature, like that. So now along this line in here, I can position my little dots, and these dots in here will be the dots that where the little spine thorns are stemming from. So now once I found these forms in here, I noticed that there is in this from 3/4 view, there is a little bit of a peak in here, and an up and down and up and down like that, with a division in between the form, right? Makes sense? So here, 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 right here, like that. So gradually you create this form in here by measuring and comparing position and proportion relationship. Now I want to draw also the vase, and the way I do it, when I make the mark of my vase, I could do the same thing. I could see how is the width, the height of this relating to the width of the vase, right? I'm gonna look at my subject from a distance now, right? I see that the width, so the height, the width is about 1.5 the height. So I take the height and I establish this outside because I want to have the measure, not necessarily the position. I can establish it, let's say here, and I want to find this 1.5, right? 1.5. I know that is going to be the width of my vase. So it's my cactus luckily is kind of smack in the middle, so I can now block in here and here, right? And now I know that I have the width of the vase, right? And now I want to find out where is the top of the ellipse going, and I see that it's very close to the top of the cactus, just here. And I also want to see where it exits on the other side, meaning I'm thinking of this as a transparent subject. Now I can draw, it just gets down to here. I look at this space in here, right? here, right? And now I can draw the vase. And I know how that vase is related in terms of proportion to this cactus in here, and also where the cactus is positioned inside this vase in here. So now I could also do the same thing to show where the soil is here, right? And then here, right? And here is my little cactus. You could also, if I look at this little florets in here, I see that I also have a division in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, octagons, cool. So octagons is easy to do, right? Here and here and here. So now I have this little segment, right? Octagonal segment coming together. They give me now the structure of the little florets, because inside that I'm going to have the little bumps that I've seen before, right? Here, here, etc., etc. So, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to let you do this. You could go to the market, buy one of these little cacti, and then they will stay with you forever. They're long lasting. They are nice little creatures. They don't ask for much, just a little bit of water once in a while, but they are really cute, really beautiful. So get a little cactus like this, or any other similar subject that you can copy easily. Like this is fairly easy compared to the complexity of the flower, but not really. I mean, you see how, yes, it is easy, but because it's less unpredictable than the petal, but at the same time it has all these hidden structures, all these little hidden characteristics that demand a little bit more attention, to be in order to be recorded properly, because they are not so visible sometimes. They're a little bit again hidden. So why don't you get the cactus and then copy it, do the drawing, and then with the next step we are going to color this this little guy.